something is going on, and it's going on in different countries, and you can take a look at the dates and you can see the origin of philosophical counseling in Germany is Achenbach. In '81, he put out a shingle. He hadn't published anything, but he started a private practice. And from '81, then it went to Holland, to Wiening in '83. And Colin Clayton started his movement in '85 in England, and that's the conference we attended. And these other dates follow pretty much from that. Colin Clayton has been given the task, officially, of translating all of Achenbach's works, so he's the spokesman for that point of view. There is a great variety of different views in here, but we can break them up into categories. The most interesting distinctions, I think, that we can make, gross distinctions, is how they relate to psychology and psychotherapy. There's a thinker whose name isn't here, Blas, B-L-A-S, Blas, who's coming out with a book that we were looking at when we were in England. And Blas is a psychotherapist with a whole roots back in Freudian analytical thought. And Blas's conviction is that the situation of psychotherapy is, now we're talking about psychotherapy, I want to be clear that formally, not eclectic systems. Eclectic systems are something else. Formal systems, by that of course I mean the great ones, Freud, Jung, Adler, Sullivan. Because eclecticism brings up a whole new idea, and the idea is a lot of things may be working, but you can't attribute it to something because it's eclectic. In any case, Blas put forth the view that in psychotherapy they're facing a crisis, and the crisis is that people don't reach fundamental levels in their own being, and therefore it doesn't go the way in which some of the major thinkers in psychotherapy would like to see it. And therefore, Blas and people like Blas want to see a dimension of philosophical counseling on top of, to meet the needs of what they see as an inadequacy in psychotherapy. Now, when they talk about philosophical practice in counseling, what I mean by that is, formally again, people who can represent with some degree of authority the major thinkers in philosophy. Heidegger, Hegel, Nietzsche, Sartre, whatever they are. Formally, therefore, the major thinkers rather than systems, the major thinkers, people who therefore claim mastery of these major thinkers and in Western only, Western philosophy, have a view which they think is significant, and they think it's significant in a therapy session to introduce those ideas because of the background of those thinkers can clarify certain issues which they don't think psychotherapists can do. Therefore, psychotherapists such as Blas think that the inadequacies of psychology and psychotherapy at critical times needs to be augmented by this philosophical practice. And with that, they think, therefore, they can meet the needs, especially if they're more perhaps sensitive patients who want something beyond just adjustment, and that's the crisis. So that's our first group. Now, what makes a philosophical counselor is very significant, so let's make sure we get it early and keep it in mind. Through all of these people, when they talk about philosophical counseling from the American Society for Philosophical Counseling and Practice, there is the movement that is urging that only philosophers with MAs and PhDs should be allowed to have the title of philosophical counselors. So they're starting formalism, already they're starting the next stage in the development, which then means they're going to try to preempt it legally and they use the term philosophical counseling, as psychologists have done in the past, to specify not what you do, but whether or not you can use the title. So that's where that is. So now, therefore, people who are philosophers with an MA or PhD, who can express a certain thought of the major philosophical thinkers, mostly European thinkers, can then be called philosophical counselors, and it's this kind of philosophical counseling that Bloss thinks is essential as an addition to bring up to date or make more full and complete psychotherapy as it exists today. That's the first school. Interesting school. At this point, there are a few people who are holding out to the idea that philosophical practice can be open to people without MAs and PhDs, and that's the internal struggle that's now taking place in this field, as it must always. Now, one of the next groups is a group of thinkers, and I'm going to use Face-to-Face. That's the name of the organization, Face-to-Face by Colin Clayton. He started with basically a Heidegger. Heidegger is the root of the thought, trying to be present in the now, and trying to express the needs of being integral in the moment and having an integrity in the moment, and all the blocks and difficulties that keep people from being that kind of an integral person in the moment are the subjects that they then explore within the subject. We have to keep that door open. They told me that it locks, so we may have that. Isn't it? Yeah, could you? I think we may have to put something in front of it, but let's hope that'll keep it open. All right. So Colin Clayton represents a Heideggerian point of view that he has turned around with his own creative thought and has applied this creative exploration of Heidegger in a practice working with habitual drug users and chronic alcoholics. And he's being eminently successful with these two groups of people, which is totally amazing, the rate of 60% in his in-treatment facility in England. Now, Heidegger plays a major role as an existentialist, obviously, and so too does he influence Achenbach. They come out of the same philosophical school. Now, there's another movement that is trying to introduce philosophy, formal philosophy, on a simplified level to children. That's Matthew Lipman. And he says, he makes a claim for the fact that introducing philosophy and rigorous thinking on the earliest level possible is therapeutic in itself. Now, this idea